The monumental task of beating the entirety of LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga while avoiding any and all studs is over. When we last left off, we had set our story mode playthrough number at 217,328. We're going to dive into the more technical stuff right away, so if you aren't all caught up, you might want to do that first. The first 3 parts of this run are linked down below, and those videos will explain most of the tricks that we'll be using. Now, this number at the time appeared to be accurate, to the best of our knowledge at least. The only studs needed to complete the game were either automatic studs from vehicle levels, studs that spawn outside of loading zones, or studs that the game forced your character to grab through cutscenes. The only studs we could possibly have any agency over were the cutscene ones. The big problem was, we wouldn't have any way to gather those, since we couldn't get close enough to stud pull them before the cutscene would trigger. Until now. If you thought stud pulling was already tedious and annoying, get ready for super stud pulling. Utilizing the stud magnet upgrade, we can give ourselves the ability to pull studs from miles away. Then, once they get close enough to our player, we can disable the upgrade. This is not only useful for avoiding specific studs, but also for making older levels easier. Levels like Hot and Cold can now be done by super stud pulling on the tower instead of trying to launch from 6 miles away. Boarding Party's trampoline room becomes a hell of a lot easier, etc, etc. But what really interests me is how many studs this will save us overall. Going in chronological order here, super stud pulling saved us 10 on the Death Star when using this multiplayer jump, since we're now able to pull this silver. It saves us 20 in the escape sequence as well, since we can pull from this barricade. And it saves us every single stud in Revelations, since the hallway studs and the R2 studs are now pullable. Aside from that, we can make some corrections to our last video to, once again, get a more accurate total. Going in chronological order, we start out with Dameron's Defiance. I was told in the comments of this video that if you enter this level with 5 torpedoes, that you'll get to keep those 5 in the level as well. I was unable to get that to work for me, but I have seen footage of this working via speedrun.com. This torpedo smuggling bug saves us a lot of studs in a lot of different areas, most notably in Dameron's Defiance, where we can essentially skip the first 2/3 of the level by shooting the bay doors open from the start. This will save us 16,280 studs, putting us really close to sub 200k. On a more minor scale, in the final level of A New Hope, we can save 940 studs by not having to open up this torpedo station since we already have 5. The only other mistake we can correct in this video is in the strength to do it, where I just didn't realize you could stud pull these studs out of the tunnel for BB-8, which saves us another 120. With the new stud pulling and torpedo smuggling, we can save 17,540, putting our new story mode total at 200,708, just 700 studs away from 200k. As I was writing this script, I realized that a lot of our numbers weren't matching up. I don't know where I made this small mistake, but in the last 3 videos, I made one somewhere. So I went back and recalculated every single value to make sure I was correct. And as promised, here are the full run statistics of story mode. The total numeric value of studs gathered is 200,708. If we take that number and subtract the total amount of automatic studs, those being studs just automatically given to us through certain events, vehicle levels, or combo meters, we would have a total of 1,040. And finally, the total physical number of studs touched is 23, all of which are due to the game either putting you into a cutscene that runs through those studs, or loading zones just exiting you on top of those studs. This means that in the story mode of the Skywalker Saga, literally every single non-automatic stud is dodgeable, besides the ones the game spawns you on top of when exiting a loading zone, or mini cutscenes where you have no control over your character. But I think this begs the question, how many studs would Freeplay mode even save? Well, let's think about this rationally. If we don't have the option to play through missions in Freeplay, you know, those things that happen between each level, then we technically don't have to count any of those loading zone studs. This means the studs that we pick up in Mos Eisley, the start of The Empire Strikes Back, that one stud on Dagobah, the studs gathered through spawning in as Rey and leaving the scavenger area, and the studs outside of the Sand Cave are non-negotiable. Those aren't even accessible in the Freeplay mode, so we don't count those. Vehicle levels as well cannot be further optimized. Because the studs always come from either destroying something or flying through a ring in a scripted cutscene section, the ship that you're using doesn't matter. And thanks to torpedo smuggling as well, there's no need to play through any of these levels as a bomber ship. Striking out vehicle studs and loading zone studs save us a whole lot. But now let's check out our remaining list of auto studs. Going once again in chronological order, we have Outmanned but not outgunned, which is not character dependent. And the same goes for I Am the Senate. And this is some rescue. The spinners in the TIE Fighter escape sequence are the same deal, and when you're fighting Kylo, there is no way to bypass this snow sequence, even if you do get a super launch. Chrome Dome Down is also not character dependent, and the same goes for the vents on the BB boss fight, which are required. And when you're fighting Palpatine, you aren't allowed to switch characters at all, meaning those auto studs are required too. Okay, so it seems like Freeplay mode wouldn't solve almost any of our issues with the auto studs. If all vehicle levels and auto studs can't be improved, what can Freeplay mode even help us with? This brings us down to the cutscene studs. Studs that are physically on the ground and seem dodgeable, but that the game forces you into while you have no control over your character. Right now, we only have 3 instances of those cutscene studs. Those being in Fulfill Your Destiny, when Vader sends you underneath the throne platform, these studs against the barricade in Be With Me, and the ones directly in front of Palpatine in the end of Be With Me. Unfortunately, in Fulfill Your Destiny, you don't have any control over what character you are playing as until the second half of the level. And because the first fight sequence is walled off, you have no time to set up a super stud pole before the section with the studs begins. Meaning, nothing can be optimized in Freeplay here, not even the 100 you spawn near in Part 2. In the Finn section of Be With Me, it's the same deal. You can't change your character, swap characters, or jump off your horse before the barricade studs spawn. And because the studs only appear after the cutscene has began playing, you can't stud pull these either, meaning once again, nothing can be optimized here. But something interesting does happen in the last Palpatine fight in Freeplay. The game, for whatever reason in my case, was spawning BB-8 directly in front of me, and while I wasn't able to directly swap to him, if I entered in Player 2 as Kylo, I could switch right over. And from there, I could super stud pull every single stud out of the way in front of Rey. Meaning, the only required studs here are the automatic ones given for beating him. Unfortunately, you do have to pick up 1 gold right here, but it's pretty minor. This means, in total for Freeplay, not counting any outside level studs, our total statistics end up being 199,908 for our total numeric value, a mere 240 if we take out the automatic and vehicle studs, and the total number of physical studs touched being 6. Those being the 3 in the first Palpatine fight, the 2 against this barricade, and the 1 in the final Palpatine fight. If Freeplay mode in total saves us only 800 studs, mainly because there are no loading zones to walk through. If we were to count those, the only amount of studs we'd be saving are the 230 in the Palpatine fight. It's really kind of funny how little free play mode does in this game. Anyways, I know this was somewhat of an anticlimactic finish, but it was nice to get that sub 200k in free play mode if anything. But what I can assure you of is that in the next game I'll be doing a minimum stud run for next week, free play mode will make all the difference. Leave your comments down below on what you think that game may be. And if you want to watch me do that live tomorrow, you can follow my Twitch as well. All links are in the description. Thanks for joining me on this extremely tedious journey, and I'll see you next week.